All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time today to join our webinar, Trends in Customer Engagement, How to Navigate the Evolving Customer Landscape. My name is Carrie Blair, and I am the Marketing Manager here at Altruas, and I'll be your moderator today. And to get us started, we have just a few housekeeping items. As a reminder, all participants are muted. If you've dialed in by phone, make sure to select the telephone option and enter in your audio PIN to eliminate any echo. Please submit all questions via the questions box, different than the chat box, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation. And lastly, this webinar will be recorded and you will receive the recording. I'm pleased to introduce to you today our speakers. We have Jake Horn. Jake is one of our managing directors. He has over 19 years of experience in technology and management, specifically in CRM solutions. And we also have Rama. He has over 20 years of experience managing large teams with many Fortune 500 companies. And with that, I will hand it over to Jake.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So what we're going to talk about today is some trends we're seeing in the marketplace when it comes to customer experience. And, the customer experience and how that's really defined is really ever-changing, and it's something that we always have to respond to. And, especially even recently with COVID, as customers buying moves more online or more disconnected, we really have to make sure we take advantage of some of these trends to really connect with our customers. So one of the things I did want to mention is this webinar is going to be conversational in nature. We like to do these more casually, just more as a conversation for everyone. And we really just hope that you learn some of the things that are going on in the customer engagement marketplace, and maybe how you can leverage some of these capabilities as in your businesses. So, Gary, why don't you hit the next slide, please? So, I want to first make sure everybody gets a good understanding of what we term customer engagement is. And it's a nebulous term that, a lot of organizations are using now. It's just like digital marketing or digital experience. We view customer engagement as a measure of a brand's interaction with customers across all touch points. So whether it be marketing, whether it be sales, whether it be support, operations, anything that touches a customer, that is something that becomes part of that customer experience. Right now, the challenge of customer experience is that buyers and clients, their expectations change. And many times, you don't have that much influence on what they consider good. The market does. And those market players are typically pretty big. I mean, 20 years ago, people would want to call into a call center. Now, they'd rather Google for information and get things self-service. And I know for myself, I don't like talking to a call center or a human if I don't have to, and I would rather chat with somebody online because I can basically deal with it while I'm doing other things. And so the challenge for most businesses is we have to respond to those trends in order to be able to let people know, or to give people good customer experiences. And so the trends that we're seeing over the last few years that are really important is the convergence of marketing, sales, and support, the rise of artificial intelligence, and then what we term as the no-code movement. And so all of these things allow you to do things either to gather more data, leverage that data, or to be more responsive to the needs of your customer. So next slide, please. So some of the things to think about in the convergence of marketing, sales, and support. Really quickly here, you've got some statistics. 84% of customers consider the experience as important as products and services. 73% of customers say one exceptional experience raises the expectations everywhere else, and 66% of customers will pay more to get top-notch experience. What these all kind of point to is some themes that clients expect a great customer experience. There's little tolerance for poor customer experience, and a good customer experience can raise and create more valuable customers. Again, we talked about the challenge of this is that the expectations are ever changing, and also to do these things and to create this great customer experience, you've got to have data. Data is the most important piece, and right now, disparate systems that have been customer facing have classically been separated. So you have a CRM system, you've got a marketing system, you've got a support system, and those systems don't talk to each other, or they do it poorly. And what that creates is a really a challenging environment to allow you to react to the information you have in the system or in those systems. So next slide, please. So one thing is convergence isn't a new idea. CRM vendors, whether it be Salesforce, whether it be Siebel, whether it be Microsoft, they've been promising a single point of customer data since probably the 1990s. I mean, that's when I got into the industry, and we were talking about the 360-degree view of the customer back then. So the question is, what's different? There's a couple of things. So cloud-based systems have really created an environment where systems can talk to each other quickly and easily, and so they've lowered the incremental cost of integrating and moving that data around. The other big thing we've seen is that marketing systems have now finally become really tightly integrated into the CRM system. And so that creates a lot of benefit because that tight integration allows you to really leverage that marketing information into sales and even more customer support and re-engagement and things like that. And so that's one of the biggest trends we're seeing now is that the systems are getting not just integrated, they're getting deeply embedded in each other. Next. So again, the buying market's moved to an online first, and it's really important to gather all the data you can. Your customers are going to know as much as they can possibly know about you before they make buying decisions. And so the challenge in a digital world is you have to carefully control the environment of what the customer learns from peer reviews, websites, internet searches, all that stuff, and it needs to go into one place. Go to the next one, we'll talk a little bit about how we do that. So one of the things that we've seen in clients that we're working with that has been really successful is this convergence of marketing and sales. And so what this means is you've typically got a CRM system, and now you plug in a marketing system that can handle things like email marketing, web forms, event management. We actually use one of these systems, and so I'll give you some examples about some of the things we can do. Surveys and landing pages and social media as well. And then we also have they have features to take web intelligence. So prior to these systems being heavily embedded, you've got tools like Google Analytics that'll tell you how good your website is doing, but it can't close the loop between we sent this person an email, a marketing email, and they filled out a form, so they identified themselves, and here's all the other web pages they went to that day. Also, let's say a few weeks go by, we don't see them, and then all of a sudden they come back to our website. Well, the key to having all of that information in one place, in one system, allows us to do things like when they come back, we can push them on an email campaign that starts, dripping on them again, dripping messages on them again. It tries to warm them up. Also, all of those interactions roll up into a lead score, and we can actually push to the sales team really qualified leads, not leads that we think might be qualified. And so the real key here is, in the organizations that we've actually implemented this in and worked with them, the light goes off for the sales team, and all of a sudden the marketing team and the sales team are on the same page. And they actually, the sales team feels like they're getting value from the marketing team, and they can see that value, as opposed to environments where marketing is sending out a bunch of messaging and sales is not really seeing the results of that. And so there's always this friction. And so what we've been able to see is when you start to embed the marketing system into your CRM system and do these things and get the web intelligence, that's really important. Sales and marketing start to get on the same page, and they're kind of, rowing in the same direction. There's a lot of different products that allow you to do this. We typically work on the CRM side. We work with Salesforce and we work with Dynamics, a Microsoft product. And in the Salesforce world, there's Pardot, there's HubSpot. In the Dynamics world, the Dynamics has a marketing product. We also work with a tool called Click Dimensions. And so I think the key is when you look at marketing and marketing automation, you always have to look at it in the concept of how does it integrate and how do I end up with the data in my larger customer, data platform or CRM system. All right.
And Jason, one thing also
Yeah.
While the attendees are answering the poll, one thing that we also have to kind of harp on is that it's not just the systems, it's also processes. So as we do this convergence between marketing, sales, and even support, they also have to get their processes kind of in line in terms of how to leverage all that data as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is very much, process oriented initially. And there's a maturity to it that folks, they have to go through a maturity process to get, a lot of times when we start with an organization, they're just struggling to get an email out. But as they go, and it takes a while to gather the data to make that data actionable. So we've got the poll.
Yeah, we've got votes coming in, so we'll just give it a little bit longer for people to submit their votes.
Yeah, so these are what we would expect. A lot of times organizations are tracking human engagement, they're tracking email, they're tracking social media. And interestingly enough, the transaction purchases, one of the things that we see is if you can take those interactions and you can track the transactions, and we'll talk about this in the AI section, you start to get predictability, and the AI tools can actually tell you what may be likely to happen. The other thing to be aware of here is it's really important to track that engagement in context of the customer. So if you're just tracking you sending out emails, there's a level of quality to the information as well. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Rama to talk about trend 2.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. So the rise of AI and how it's being leveraged in marketing. So, marketing now is not like, the show Mad Men where they do flashy ads. Now you see marketers leveraging data in terms of making, decisions. And quickly, before I go into further, AI machine learning is essentially, predictive analytics. So it's taking data and through, course of human interaction of, helping with those algorithms, eventually you have a machine that's essentially making a decision for you versus, human getting involved. And what you see here, over the course of period is that marketers are using more now, machine learning and artificial intelligence to kind of help them with their brand imaging or even, targeting a certain demographics that they haven't necessarily have had as a customer base, but now are able to use messaging that kind of resonates with them in order to be able to get them as a customer. You're even seeing within advertising more of a rise in programmatic advertising versus your typical ad media spin on like radio and television, but leveraging more like digital ads. So in general, what we're seeing is a more of a trend of marketing taking the data that they have, leveraging a platform like CRM, as Jake just mentioned, a couple previous slides before where he kind of showed on the dynamic side of things, here's how you can go leverage the data that's coming in to go more actionable decisions. And if you ever had a Salesforce pitch recently, all they pitch you is Einstein, which is their AI platform. Carrie, the next slide. So what are the benefits really of using AI within marketing? A lot of it is it's boosting your kind of decision making on how to go help, whether it's online support for your customers. So just think about AI chatbots and how they're able to go service your customer, or even the personalization within, the customer. So if you think about if you bought anything on Amazon or anything on, another retailer where you have, used frequently, they give you, hey, you bought this, other people have bought this. And it's more of helping, that customer try to, one, engage with your brand further to go, make more, purchases of your goods and services. And two, be able to curate, further more data points for you to be able to target further on. Other things is more segmenting your customers more. So looking at your demographics to go see how you can go create content or messaging that is relatable to that demographic. So segmenting it out, then looking at what that demographics is, and then creating messaging that will resonate with that in order to be able to further your brand, increase your sales, or even, attract new customers. And essentially, that helps salespeople out too, because they take the look at that data. If you have, people that are out there, out in the field, selling, they can go take a look at the data that they have around that customer to be able to figure out a way, in a more meaningful way to be able to engage with that customer to be able to try to get that sale. Next slide. Well, one of the basis of being able to do artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I think Jake alluded to it earlier on, is really data. Data is really the king here. So one of the ways to go do it is leveraging a customer data platform. And if you don't necessarily have a customer data platform, you can go look at creating a data mart. A lot of this data that you're getting is feeding in from CRM. CRM should be your master data for your customer. Try to get that single view. But what happens is that when you have a tool like a customer data platform, it's going to allow you to be able to do more of that analytics that you need to be able to get to that predictive aspect of being able to do AI and machine learning, being able to understand what your customer is going to want to do before they even know it. And part of it is it's taking a lot of data from other aspects, from the poll showed you. It's not just your how they've engaged with you, your customer interactions with whether, campaign, sales, or even customer service, but it's customer satisfaction surveys, it's social media, other third parties. If you take a look at, a great example is Square, if you've ever used it anywhere else, and then you went to a new store or a small business that's using it, and you use that same credit card, it automatically kind of pops up with, your phone number or email where to send that receipt. And part of that is that organization leveraging Square to go take that data of your information to kind of pass that on to that retailer. So CDP essentially, there are plenty of tools that are out there, and they're kind of very, the infancy stages of, tools that are there. You could go take a look at Data Mart, but really at the end of the day, it's a unification of your customer data, taking data from CRM and then taking other aspects of it to be able to create analytics. Next slide. So if you really think about it, we're at 2020. There are a lot of organizations that are already leveraging AI and ML. Gartner, they're stating 85% of those customer interactions are going to be handled without a human being. Jake alluded to it earlier. I'm like him. I hate calling customer service. I'd rather do it on a chat bot or through a text so that I can be able to do other things and not be, stuck on a phone call. Boosting productivity, 40% boost is what Accenture is saying in terms of being able to use AI. Part of that is you can get more productivity out of the people that you have, staff to be able to reach out to your customers. A great example is really around customer care in terms of leveraging the information that's out there on their CRM platform to be able to be proactive in how they interact with their customers. An example that I can give you is a retailer that is leveraging a CRM. Once a customer calls in, you could set it up in a way to where, you as a customer rep would know that, hey, are you calling about this existing open order that I have? And they can be able to easily pull that information up and be able to have a more conversation to where they're proactive in trying to help that customer versus being reactive in terms of what that customer is wanting. And then I think at the end of the day, yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I would just say that now one of the things is, organizations have been talking about AI for a long time, and it used to be something that large organizations had to invest in because it was expensive. What we're seeing now is the main part of this trend is it's getting commoditized, so that organizations like Microsoft and Salesforce have done a really good job of packaging AI up into things that organizations of all sizes can use, and it not be what I would term as fluff. It's actually usable, right? And you can get value out of it. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think now what you're seeing is, especially around CRM, they've invested heavily in terms of being able to provide facilitate, the machine learning and artificial intelligence. You're seeing larger organizations now try to leverage more of that CDP to be able to get further, deeper dive into that personalization on their analytics. But if you're even a small organization, just getting a CRM like a Dynamics or a Salesforce is going to, take you halfway there in terms of being able to leverage machine learning and AI. Next slide, Carrie. So just quickly, and I know I kind of harped on it. If you just think about how you can go, what are all those facets that you can go look at AI in terms of helping with marketing and sales? It's that personalized user experience. The younger demographics, they really like to feel like, that the experience, the content resonates with them and that it's only for them. And AI really helps with that. You got the AI-powered chatbots that I mentioned before, improving your lead generation. So now you can go take a look at, what is doing well for you in terms of being able to convert your leads, based on demographics or other factors that it would take you a longer time to go do, but now you have, machine learning, that ML that's being able to provide that to your sales resources, doing more targeted marketing campaigns. So again, creating content campaigns that is going to resonate with the demographic that you're trying to get, identifying trends to help you with, how to stay competitive in the landscape or even how to get ahead of your competitors, predicting those potential customers. Content is really king these days. And just really getting into predictive analytics. Next slide. Which is an example of AI.
Yeah. So here's some quick examples of AI that's embedded into different. I'm going to show you some examples from Dynamics and from Salesforce, and we've implemented these in a lot of organizations. So, and I apologize for this being a little bit blurry, but here on the right side, what you're going to see is here's a lead score. So an example of a lead score. This is a good lead. That lead score is improving. And the system really looks at information about that lead, like this is in the finance industry, and in an email that you received from them, there was intent to buy, and they also are they've bought before. The other thing to see here is the application can actually look to see who has relationships with them and get sentiment information on that relationship. And finally, in the middle section, there's some prompting of what the next action should be. So in Microsoft's case in particular, the way they're doing a lot of this is they're actually using data in CRM and data inside Office 365. So me as a seller, it goes and looks at my Office 365 information, and it also looks at the information in CRM, and then the results information like buying behavior, and then it can score this, and that gets really powerful because it can it's not just a silo of what's in CRM, it's that both of them. Go to the next slide here. This is some examples of what Salesforce does with Einstein. They also effectively look at lead information and create likelihood predictions. The point is they want to. The point of all of this is to get you to focus on the leads or opportunities that are most likely to close, and also give you actionable things like how to push it towards that close. Next slide.
Yeah, one other thing to add too, Jake, is that you could take that same information on your existing customer base and look at how to go retain by looking at scoring your customers and assessing a score on whether they're at risk or not. And so if they're at risk, what can you do as actionable items to go maintain them as a customer?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And here's another example of a management dashboard or a seller's dashboard to give them information about what clients are currently talking about. Here's an example of that. Also, there's some sentiment analysis. So, of the 20 sales calls that this seller has done, that there's a lot of negative ones, which would be concerning if I was the manager. But and then also what brands are being detected across sales calls. And again, this uses Office 365 information as well as CRM information. So here's the next slide. And here's an example of a dashboard that is trend analysis about a seller over time. A manager may use this. So we've got some sentiment information, over the last set of calls, what their average talk to listen ratio is, and then how is that sentiment changed over time. One of the things to talk about is that, again, it's important to have the data, and then the other is you've got to have a certain amount of data over time. So typically that's, like 100 opportunities that either result in, deals won or lost, or 100 leads. And these things learn over time and they get better. But, there's typically, you have to at least have enough seed data to where it gets workable. And this technology, like sentiment analysis, is actually really accurate these days. It's a technology that's been used to detect spam for a long period of time. And so, again, this type of stuff is really, really actionable now, whereas 5 years ago it wasn't. So, all right, next one.
All right, so considerations for AI ML. This is kind of where Altruas really, where we really help a lot of our customers is really assessing and road mapping out how to leverage, their CRM implementation even further, or, how to get into using AI and ML. So part of it really kind of starts out with data governance and compliance. So AI and ML require consistent data. So it's understanding where all your data flows are coming in. It's putting out, what all your master data is and where all that master data exists. And then being able to go then take the next step in terms of how to use AI and ML. The other aspect of it is if we're talking about customer data, there is a lot of compliance, regulatory stuff that we do have to take in consideration. So, being GDPR compliance or general data protection regulation. So that we help a lot of customers out with, really that's the foundation to get to AI and ML is really that data governance compliance. The next step is that if you do have a CRM in place, is really helping them with getting to that single view of that customer. So, a lot of people, they'll implement CRM, but then it gets, chock full of, data that's not necessarily useful. So it's really helping them out in terms of, again, identifying those source data collection. Do we put it into CRM? Do we put it somewhere else where CRM can go leverage it, where the people that are using the CRM platform are able to go see that data and then take actionable items. So, and the other aspect is, if you see large organizations now, is that they're looking at leveraging it more of a customer data platform or creating a data mart to get that better 360 view of that customer. Once you have all that kind of set up, then it's pretty much, from there, it's just looking at, the analytics and tools that you have in place to be able to take that data and create actionable insights into that data. And, so you could use stuff like, Jake already mentioned, Salesforce has Einstein that can do some of that, or you could even use tools outside of that, like a Tableau or a ClickView to be able to try to get to that analytics, or even Microsoft's Power BI tools. And then I think the key thing there is really investing in personalization. And what I mean by that is taking the data that you have now and then try to create some personalization towards a demographic or a market segment, and then looking at measuring what that impact is. So does this message resonate with this particular market segment better than another one, or is it about the same? And what they'll do is they'll help you truly understand how to go take the data that you have and looking at creating content, messaging, how to be able to do better lead generation to be able to get to that customer. And it's a roadmap. It's not something that you can go do overnight, but you can take those steps to be able to get there to help you, beat out your competitors or, kind of stay, competitive in your market. And, Altruas, that's probably our, one of our strengths is really helping you with assessing that and be able to create that roadmap working with your IT or your marketing organization. Yeah, next slide. Back to you, Jake.
So trend number 3. Yeah, so trend number 3 is no-code development movement. So this is another trend that really vendors have been promising or wanting to do for a long period of time, and I think we've finally gotten to a point where this is real. And so what is no-code? So no-code is the ability. It's really platforms that allow for business analysts or people who can. I like to say, if you can create a complex spreadsheet with some formulas, you can probably build a no-code system. And it allows for people inside organizations that are not classically developers to actually build applications that the organization can use. And this is it's kind of an offshoot of CRM. Salesforce has their own platform, Microsoft does, and there's some other players that have them. But effectively what they've done is they built these no-code engines and then built a CRM on top of them. And they're all kind of selling the engine as well. I mean, go to the next slide, please. I mean, so the real power of this and the benefit for organizations is in their ability to be extremely nimble. So, if you take a developer, if I needed to build an application to capture information about anything, really, previous to this, you'd have to go hire a developer, they'd have to build out a database, they'd have to put some web servers up, and it was a few months later, and they maybe got something a little bit you can do. And so now, you can subscribe to these products and you can say, here's the information I want to track and gather data on, and then here's what I want the form to look like. And all of a sudden you've got an application that people can use on the web or they can use on their phones or tablets. And it's something they can do in a matter of days. And you don't need developers to do it. And so this is really one of the trends that we see, and it's also the ability to customize your customer platforms as well. And there's some things to be aware of. There is, I would say that most of the time, if you are tracking information about your customers, you're putting together customer portals, or you're capturing data in the field, and it is not proprietary that you own the system. Meaning, if I have a SaaS product that I'm bringing to market, I'm not going to put it in one of these platforms. But if it's an application that I'm tracking information about my business that I want to leverage in other places, then it makes a lot of sense to use this type of tool. There's some other considerations as well. One of the biggest things that you want to make sure that you do is that you put in governance processes when you start to use these tools, so that you don't get a bunch of people just building applications all over the place, and they don't interact with each other, or they're doing the same thing, or you just get sprawl. And so what we typically tell people is that they do need to have some governance on this. They do need to make it somebody's part of their job, and put a process for approval, and make sure that there's some reinforcement when you build something in a tool like this to get people to actually use it. So go on to the next one.
And the other thing to add in there, to add on to you, Jake, is that part of it is, a lot of times you think you can go build that no-code application, but then when you realize you need other data or integration, then that's when you probably need to tap the brakes a bit before you get it too convoluted to involve your IT organization or a developer.
Mm-hmm. So I like examples. This is an example of what we've done with no code. We worked with an art handling organization. They actually move. If you've gone, well, it's COVID, so you can't. But if you've gone to an art exhibit, they probably moved that. And so one of the things that they do is they set up shuttles so that between Dallas and LA and Dallas and New York, and they're moving art along those shuttles. And the way those shuttles work is somebody may contact them and say, hey, I need to get this from my house to the warehouse in New York or the warehouse in Dallas, and they'll put it on a shuttle, on a truck, on a shuttle that they're going to run on a pre-scheduled basis. One of the problems that we had there is, once you get a bunch of waypoints and items scheduled on the shuttle, you have to optimize that route. And so route optimization has classically been a pretty tough problem to solve. Developers have to do a lot of coding to get it right, and most of the time it has 5 years ago it would take a small army of developers to do it and do it right. Well, now with these no-code platforms and the capabilities that are out there, that are in SaaS products, we were able to basically optimize, add an optimized route button that goes out, grabs all the pickups and drop-offs, and sends it to the Bing. Bing has an API that is basically a routing API, and that would return us the correct order we would optimize based on time. It would give us the correct order, and then create a route map and organization, and we would let it basically allowed them to one click optimize the routing of those shuttles. In the past, where it was they would have to put it on a map and do a lot of manual stuff, and the real significance of this is we were able to do it without writing any code, and it was done in a matter of days. It didn't take us weeks to do this like it would have taken with a developer. So there's some real power in this that I think organizations can take advantage of. So next slide. So why do you really need to care about all this? My personal opinion is customer engagement trends, they change over time. They are constantly changing. And, we like to use the metaphor of a boat. is you can't really determine what the waves are, but you can ride them. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to immediately go and implement AI just for the sake of AI, or use a no-code tool just for the sake of using a no-code tool. What it really means is that you need to take a set of all of these capabilities and evaluate them against your, the destination of where you want to be with your customer engagement process, and then use the ones that allow you to get there the most effectively. And that's something we help people do. If you go to the next slide, I mean, we have a couple of different offerings. We do a customer experience assessment. The main thing is we start with where are you now, what type of data do you have now, and then we help you really define the type of experience you'd like to have in the future, and we give you some actionable steps that you can take to actually go and do this. And that's one. We have some digital experience assessments as well. And these are product agnostic. It's really based on the tools that you have now, and so that's a good next step there. So we'll turn it over for questions.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Jake and Rama. Always love to hear about what the trends are out there. Being a marketer myself and a lot of my peers, we're always talking about wanting better data and wanting better information around customer insights. And, these tools seem to help bridge marketing and sales. And then really having that single view, one source of truth reporting. I love seeing those dashboards. So continue to submit your questions via the question box in the panel. We do have a question. So my company already has a CRM system, but how do I get started in leveraging some of these AI tools? Where do I start?
So the first place to start is to take an assessment of what data you have, the quality of that data, and that's going to really drive the type of AI capabilities that you're going to be able to implement. And what I say is, in order to predict the closing of an opportunity or or a lead, you have to have enough data that has gone through that cycle for the system to extract whether or not to basically learn about it and then apply what it learns. And so the first step is understanding what the data you have, and then the second step is filling the gaps in using it. So,
well, and the other thing is, yeah. So to add on that is a lot of what you have to do when you're trying to get to that AI and ML is it's a learning curve. So I mean, the machine is just not going to know just because you have that clean data to be able to go learn it. It's understanding what you want to go do with it to build out those algorithms, then test it out. So think of it almost like an A/B test of, okay, I tested out with this and I tested out with that. What got me to a better, decision from that machine learning to be able to go use that? And then you have to adjust it over a period of time before you can just say, hey, now the bot can go take over. So there is a bit of a learning curve that has to happen, and it's, to Jake's point, it's assessing what, your data, how clean that data is, then looking at what you want to go leverage AI and ML for, and then slowly building out those algorithms. And then once you get, a good experience with it, then it becomes easier for those other ones, down the road.
Okay, great. We have another question. We are currently on Dynamics CRM. What are some of the examples? What are the best tools to use with Dynamics for AI?
Yeah, so from an AI perspective, I mean, you would want to use the sales insights that's built, or the insights that's built into Dynamics. It's in Salesforce there's Einstein, but it's their version of the same it's really Microsoft's heavily investing in that with the insights tools, and so they have the sales insights, the customer service insights, they have marketing insights. On the marketing side, if you want to start grabbing the data and doing marketing, we typically recommend you evaluate the Microsoft marketing product or Click Dimensions, and there's some reasons why we tend towards the Click Dimensions product, but there's some reasons why for that. But a lot of times it's finding the best tool for you. And my personal opinion is you typically just go with the top two and figure out which one of those is going to best fit your needs.
Okay, great. And another question, what is all involved with the customer experience assessment? What does that look like?
So we initially evaluate, come in and have some conversations with you about what you want your customer experience to be. We do an underlying assessment of where you're at. We call it where are we now, where do we want to be, how do we get there type of engagement. And so we obviously do a lot of research on where you're now, talk to you about where you want to be, what your goals are, and then make some recommendations for places where you can improve, or systems that you can implement, or integrations you can do to get you where you want to go. So it's just a series of workshops and analysis work that we do. And for us, the way we're structured is, you're talking to Ram and I. We are technical people. We're not professional sales folks, and so we're actually involved in doing the work, and we get excited about this stuff. And so, typically it's us or somebody, working with us as well, so that does that.
Yeah, I mean, good point. And part of it is, I tend to do the whole customer journey mapping, and then figuring out where are the low points in that customer journey, and then understand, okay, what's causing that? How do we go improve that? Because a lot of times on the initial, it may not even be technology, it may be processes that also are the cause of, how you can go improve that customer experience. So there's a lot of facets to it, but it's usually senior people that are involved, having these workshops, talking to you, and then, and asking you, really why, you want to go down the direction that you want to go to. And we have a lot of, industry knowledge along with, technical knowledge to be able to help our customers out.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. All right, we have another question. So aside from Click Dimensions and some of the Salesforce stuff, what are the other options that are out there?
Other options? Well, that's where like a customer data platform comes into play. So you would still have like a CRM in place, because that's really, that's the best spot for having your master data for your customer information. But then a customer data platform is probably the next play, really, in terms of being able to do analytics. It's basically the next step up from using something that Sales Insights or Einstein within a CRM platform to be able to do more of that predictive analytics. There's other things and now it ties into CRM. Like all these platforms, it's really the data is what's driving this, but they're analytical engines, and there's, we do assessments of, what makes sense in terms of what CDP would be the best fit for your needs. But a lot of them are the ones that are driving it. I mean, you can even take it before even looking at a CDP, really creating, looking at your data warehouse, creating a data mart of all that customer data, and then leveraging other analytical tools to be able to build that out.
Right. Yeah, there's some lower cost tools like Zoho that has a lot of these features. We tend towards the Salesforce and the CRM side. We tend towards Salesforce and Microsoft because they're the two leaders in the market. But there's some tools like Zoho that does it, and they have some of the flexibility as well. So
Yeah, good point. And there's other AI tools that are out there that are SaaS-based that if you feed it whatever data and be able to build out the algorithm it will provide that. It's probably not your long-term solution, just because one depending on the scale, they may not be able to scale because a lot of them are startups and are still emerging in terms of being able to scale and perform well. But that is another lower cost option in a lot of instances.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, those are all the questions that we have. I will let Jake close us off.
Yeah. So, again, we're Altruas. Go ahead and go just to the next slide. Mm-hmm. So, if you want to connect with us and talk about how we, how you like to take advantage of these trends, don't hesitate to reach out directly to myself or Rama. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. And again, I appreciate your time and attention, and thanks for coming.
All right. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.